right, so now we're going to use our right triangle trig to find angle measures. And before we do that, I want to show you where that is on your calculator. So anytime you're trying to find a side measure, you're going to use sine, cosine, or tangent. But if you want to find an angle, you have to use what's called the arc sine or the arc cosine or the arc tangent. So if you take a look at my calculator here, and yours might be a little bit different, above the sine key, you see this sine to the -1. And above the cosine, you'll see cosine to the -1. And above the tangent, you'll see tangent to the -1. Those are called arc sine, arc cosine, and arc tangent. And those are the keys on your calculator you want to use anytime you're trying to find an angle measure. So if you want to find a side, you're going to use the black keys. If you want to find an angle, you're going to have to use the second keys. So if I wanted to find like the sine of 4/5, I'm going to go arc sine and then 4 divided by 5 and hit enter. And it'll tell me that it's 53 degrees. We usually round to the nearest whole number, so I'll just say 53 degrees. So let's just practice using your calculator a little bit, right? If you want to know what the sine of x is, and it tells you that it's 0.5396. Because this is an angle that you're trying to find, you're going to go to your calculator. And because it's an angle, you're going to use the second button. So you're going to go second sine and then type in 0.5396 and hit enter. And you'll see that it's 32.6, so we'll round it to 33 degrees. If it's a fraction, if they say like the cosine of A is 12/19, again, A is an angle, so you want to go ahead and use the second button. So you're going to say second cosine and type in that fraction 12 divided by 19 and hit enter, and it'll be 51 degrees. 50.8, but we'll round that to 51 degrees. So practice doing that on your calculator. If you're not sure how to do it on your actual calculator, Google how to find arc sine or arc cosine or arc tangent, and it should probably give you the information. It's usually a second button on your calculator. So now let's see how we're going to do this. So here's an example. Here's a triangle. And it's the angle that I don't know. And I know that this side is 4 and this side is 5. Well, once again, we have to decide, am I going to use sine, cosine, or tangent? Because that's important to know. So based on this angle, this side is adjacent. It's the closest one to my angle. So that's adjacent, which means this one here is opposite. And this one's across from the 90. So this is my hypotenuse. Well, the opposite isn't marked. I don't know anything about it, so I'm not even going to worry about that one. So I have to take a look at what trig function uses adjacent and hypotenuse. And if you look that up, that'll be the cosine. So you know that the cosine of the angle, I can't take the cap off the pen. The cosine of the angle is my adjacent over the hypotenuse. The cosine of the angle that we don't know, well, the adjacent is 4, the hypotenuse is 5. It's an angle measure that I want to find, so I'm going to have to use the second button on my calculator. So I'm going to go second cosine 4 divided by 5, and I'm going to get 36.869 or 37 degrees. So I know that this angle here is 37 degrees. So that's how you can find angles using your sine, cosine, and tangent. Let's try another one. On the concept check, number 1, it gives you this triangle. Tells you there's your right angle. I didn't draw it very well, but there you go. You can look at it on your picture. And it tells you that this is 11. This is the angle you're looking at, and this is 4.4. So once again, opposite my 90 degrees is my hypotenuse, so I know that this here is my hypotenuse. This is right next to the angle. This side is right next to the angle, so I know this is adjacent. This isn't marked at all, so I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to look to see, well, what uses the adjacent and the hypotenuse? So that'll be the cosine of some angle is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. I'm going to write in what I know. The adjacent is 4.4. The hypotenuse is 11. It's an angle measure that I'm trying to find, so I'm going to have to use the second button on my calculator. So second cosine 4.4 divided by 11, and I get 66 degrees if I round it. So I know that that angle is 66 degrees. Let's try number 2. So now I have a triangle that looks like this. And here's my right angle, and it tells me that this is 11.9, and this is 10, and this here is the angle that I'm looking at. So once again, based on this triangle, this here's my 90 degrees, so I know that this is my hypotenuse. This side is right next to the angle that I'm looking at, so this is going to be my adjacent. And this is away from it, so this is going to be my opposite. Well, my hypotenuse isn't, there's nothing that they say about the hypotenuse at all, so I'm going to ignore that. And I'm going to say, well, what uses the opposite and the adjacent? Well, the tangent of some angle is the opposite over the adjacent. Again, just look at your chart. So if I write in what I know, the tangent of some angle, the opposite is 11.9. The adjacent is 10. I'm trying to find an angle measure, so I have to use the second button on my calculator. So I'm going to go second tangent 11.9 divided by 10, and I'm going to get 49.95 or 50 degrees. So I know that this angle up here is 50 degrees. And let's do number 3 on the concept check just to make sure. So here I have a triangle that looks like this. Here's my right angle. Oops, I didn't draw that well, but this is the angle I'm looking at. They know that this is 4 and this is 13. Okay, once again, you always want to write down what it is that you know as far as your sides go. So if this is my 90 degrees, opposite my 90 degrees is always my hypotenuse. This side here, which is next to my angle, is going to be my adjacent. It kind of looks like the hypotenuse the way I drew it, but you can look at the picture in your piece of paper that I have printed here. And then this here is going to be the opposite, because it's the one furthest away from the angle that we're looking at. This adjacent side isn't listed at all, so I'm not going to look at it. I'm going to say what uses the opposite and the hypotenuse. That will be the sine. So I know the sine of an angle is the opposite over the hypotenuse. I'm going to write in what I know. The sine of the angle is the opposite is 4. The hypotenuse is 13. It's an angle that I want to try and find, so I'm going to use the second function on my calculator. So I'm going to go second sine 4 divided by 13. And it's going to be 17.9 or about 18 degrees. So if you have any questions, let me know.